Home ownership has long been a cornerstone of our dream, our Canadian dream, symbolizing stability, security, and a place to call your own. However, it's especially challenging these days. Too many Canadians are being priced out of the neighborhoods that they grew up in, like here in the Point, as has been obvious for about a decade. It's not just enough for homes to keep up with the demand. It's our shared responsibility, federal, provincial governments, to make sure that our kids can live in these beautiful spots. Today I'm here to share the news on the first home savings account, which helps put the goal of home ownership back within reach for so many. Le CELIAP aide les acheteurs potentiels d'une première maison épargnée à l'abri de l'impôt pour leur première maison. En ouvrant un compte, les Canadiens peuvent épargner jusqu'à 8 000 non imposables chaque année et faire fructifier leur argent. Un CELIAP permettra aux gens d'épargner jusqu'à 40 000 $ pour acheter leur première maison. C'est comme un régime enregistré d'épargne retraite, en ce sens que la cotisation au CELIAP sont déductibles d'impôts. Les frais pour l'achat d'une première maison, y compris les revenus de placement, sont également non imposables. Ça fera une grosse différence pour le premier rapport en capital des gens qui veulent s'acheter une première maison. So, $4,000 per person, savings are tax deductible, tax-free, and tax-free going out. First home savings accounts are 7 financial institutions, and we've been told that the uptake on them has been pretty rapid. The Canadians see the value, and we're happy to have their backs. It does go beyond the first home savings account too, and by combining these measures that help put home ownership within reach with a strategic and economic immigration approach, the federal government is making housing more affordable and bringing in the skilled workers required to build more homes. Without those skilled workers coming from outside Canada, we absolutely cannot build the homes and the demand that exists today. L'immigration est un facteur économique clé ici au Québec et partout au Canada, puisqu'elle représente près de 100% de la croissance de notre main-d'œuvre. Nous devons veiller à ce que les personnes compétentes du monde entier aient la possibilité de venir au Canada et de déployer leurs compétences spécialisées pour contribuer à la croissance de notre économie. Étant donné que les provinces ont besoin de travailleurs pour répondre à la demande, pour pallier à la pénurie de main-d'œuvre en matière de logement, et que le secteur de la construction domiciliaire fait face à d'immenses défis en matière de recrutement de travailleurs qualifiés, il est essentiel que l'immigration soit prise en compte dans l'approche globale. To conclude, these are concrete actions. They'll make a difference in the ability of young couples, perhaps not so young couples, to buy and put their first capital payment and down payment on a house, which is so key, tax-free. The housing supply in communities across the country is tight, but this will make it more affordable to make sure our cities remain a great place to live, like here in the Point. Grâce au CELIAP, le gouvernement du Canada aide à concrétiser le rêve d'accession à la propriété pour tous les Canadiens. That's it for the substantive part of this press conference. Et je suis sûr que vous êtes impatients de poser des questions sur ceci et peut-être d'autres sujets. I'm glad to take your questions on this, and I suspect other matters as well. Merci.
Alors bonjour, merci d'être parmi nous. Si vous avez une question, veuillez vous inscrire sur votre média. Et un rappel que c'est une question et un suivi. So if you have a question, it's one question, one follow-up. Please introduce yourself and your media outlet that you're representing here today. Thank you. You can come to the mic.
Bonjour, Marie-Lise. La question est moins en lien avec le CELIAP, mais davantage avec l'accessibilité au logement. Sachant qu'il y a cette volonté du gouvernement d'accueillir 500 000 nouveaux immigrants par année, que c'est déjà difficile de se trouver, d'acheter une maison ou un logement, c'est quoi le plan du gouvernement pour augmenter l'offre, les mises en marché?
Ben, 2 éléments, Marie-Lise. Et puis, d'emblée, je dirais que c'est pas l'immigration qui a doublé la valeur, même triplé la valeur en équité des maisons au cours de la dernière décennie. Je dirais aussi que ce n'est pas l'immigration qui a été responsable de la flambée des taux d'intérêt. mais il reste que, évidemment, l'arrivée d'immigrants pose un enjeu, évidemment, pour s'assurer que ces gens-là puissent avoir un logement abordable. La réalité dans cette immigration, c'est, vous parlez de 500 000, un bon nombre de ces gens-là ont déjà des maisons, sont déjà des résidents permanents. Et ce n'est pas un chiffre. Le chiffre existe, c'est nos niveaux que nous fixons à l'immigration pour planifier un flux stable et structuré des gens qui viennent ici au Canada. Mais c'est des gens qui viennent avec forte concurrence pour des facteurs économiques pour contribuer à l'éclosion de notre pays. C'est des gens qui vont bâtir des maisons. Si vous parlez aux syndicats de travailleurs qui ont des travailleurs qui bâtissent des maisons, il y a une pénurie énorme de main-d'œuvre, surtout en Ontario, mais partout au Canada. Donc, quand on parle de ce demi-million de gens qui viennent, ces gens-là vont bâtir les maisons. Comme les gens qui ont venu ici dans les années 50 et 60, qui ont bâti les maisons qu'on voit aujourd'hui à Pointe-Saint-Charles. C'était des immigrants à forte concurrence. Alors, c'est clair que le gouvernement fédéral, le gouvernement provincial, que ce soit au Québec ou dans le reste du pays, ont un rôle principal à jouer à adresser cette pénurie. Puis notre gouvernement, d'ailleurs, puis il faut le rappeler, en 2015, c'était le premier gouvernement fédéral dans une génération à investir dans le logement. Ici au Québec, peu importe la couleur du parti, c'était la dernière province à signer une entente bilatérale avec le fédéral pour investir dans le logement. Donc, ça a traîné de la patte à cause de plusieurs raisons, pas besoin de rentrer dans les détails. Mais c'est de l'argent qui se déploie présentement. On a aussi mis des milliards de dollars, puis on peut parler du vers un chez-soi qui a fait toute une différence dans Pointe-Saint-Charles, puis partout à Montréal pour héberger des gens dans le besoin, ainsi que les investissements qu'on fait dans l'accélérateur au logement qu'on déploie à travers le pays. Alors oui, il y a un rôle du fédéral, il y a une pénurie de maisons, il y a une flambée des prix, mais quand on parle d'immigration, les gens qui viennent au pays, ce n'est pas des gens qui vont chercher des maisons nécessairement à Westmount ou des maisons à fort prix. Il se trouve une maison, mais on parle de catégories qui sont assez différentes. Puis il faut les décortiquer. On peut mettre ça sur le dos d'une immigration qui est nécessaire en soi pour bâtir ces mêmes maisons, que ce soit ici à Pointe-Saint-Charles ou à travers Montréal, à travers le Québec et à travers le Canada.
Vous venez de dire que ces immigrants allaient contribuer à bâtir des logements. Est-ce que c'est parce que vous avez un plan de recruter spécifiquement des travailleurs de la construction?
Oui, il y a plusieurs volets. Puis même dans les semaines avant que je devienne ministre, le ministre Fraser avait annoncé une façon d'accélérer l'accès pour les travailleurs pour venir ici au Canada pour pallier justement à cette main-d'œuvre. Il y a beaucoup de gens qui veulent venir au Canada. Ils ont beaucoup de talent. Dans la construction, on a une enveloppe qui est dédiée directement aux gens qui sont d'expression francophone, pour les agriculteurs aussi, ainsi que différents niveaux de travailleurs qui veulent venir ici. Donc, une façon d'accélérer l'accès au Canada pour les permis de travail. Et ça sera important. Puis c'est déjà une forte demande qui vient de partout au monde pour venir ici. Il reste beaucoup de travail à faire, par contre, puis il faudra regarder le résultat de ces initiatives, mais c'est des initiatives qui ont été annoncées en juillet, si je ne m'abuse, par le ministre Fraser, mon prédécesseur.
Merci.
Merci.
Inspector from Global News. The Bank of Canada said that high immigration levels have contributed to keeping housing prices high, but you're not considering slashing immigration levels. Why not?
Couple reasons. I think it's also, I'd preface this by saying it's important to look at the data that's coming in on an ongoing basis. As a statutory legal matter, I have to go to Parliament and put forward the levels plan that shows Canadians exactly what those numbers look like. Right now, they're fixed at the high 400,000 towards 500,000 people for the current levels plan that we have. It's important to break those down. There is a portion of that we control. It is notably in skilled workers, which is about economic migration, which are people that are coming here, bringing their capital and building the country that we see here today, which is radically different than the country that I grew up in and my parents grew up in. That's 60% of it. And then there's a 20% that touches family reunification. And then there is the unpredictable, which is getting even more unpredictable in a world that we're living in with displaced populations reaching records highs of about 100 million people across the globe. That is refugees and asylum seekers. And we try to plan as a country for what may happen of people coming in, and those numbers are ones that we have to provide for, and that we have a humanitarian duty towards people that are fleeing war and persecution. And so it's an issue of making sure that we are bringing in the right people that are actually contributing to the economy, making sure that families stay together, but also playing our role as a responsible country around the world and welcoming, flows of Syrian, Afghan, now Ukrainian refugees fighting, in this case, aggression from Russia, to make sure that we have, the resources to accommodate those people. People coming to this country are resourceful. When they bring capital, they're able to acquire houses. That Bank of Canada report and the TD report as well is important to me as I look at that and talk to cabinet members about what those impacts are. But we have to be clear about what we're talking about. If people are asking us to slash, what does that mean? Does that mean slashing? So it's an apples to apples conversation. It's one that needs to be done in a rational, open way with provinces and territories, and especially here in Quebec, where Quebec controls a good chunk of its immigration policy, particularly on the family reunification envelope, which is capped at about 10,000 right now, and there's a backlog of 30,000 families that want to come here and support their kids in this case, and that's something that we have to cut off because Quebec says we need to cut it off. These come with mature conversations that we have with provinces and territories about how we welcome newcomers, and that's one that I plan to have. It will probably come with some disagreements, but it's something we have to have in the open and do this in a responsible way like we are as a G7 country.
Speaking of Quebec, what did you make of the recent announcement that they want to make sure people are able to speak French as much as possible before arriving?
I think we have a role as the federal government, and I would say primarily to make sure we are supporting the diaspora of French-speaking communities outside Quebec to make sure that they are thriving. We only recently hit levels of French-speaking newcomers to Canada outside Quebec, and we're looking ambitiously at increasing those to make sure that we have a country that lives up to the aspirations that we have as a country that has two official languages, French and English. We're willing to work with Quebec on that. We know there are challenges. We know that countries that are French-speaking predominantly can really contribute to what we need to have Quebec as, which is a province where everyone should be able to speak French. I would also add that it isn't the case that everyone coming to Quebec can speak French. I would say, having knocked on doors in this riding and a little north of here in Little Burgundy and in St. Henry, that you have parents of kids that don't speak French, but their kids sure as hell do. And they're going to some of the best schools, and it's really inspirational to see. So I'm not asking everyone to sacrifice a generation to learn French. People should be able to learn French quickly. But the federal government has a role to play in this. And with the Quebec-Canada Accord, we have literally transferred hundreds of millions of dollars to Quebec to make sure that they are able to train and educate people in French. And we're eager to see those results. But Canada's at the table contributing substantial amounts to make sure that Quebec can live up to its stated aspirations, and we entirely support them. But it is tricky because it shouldn't be tricky because French is one of the largest language in the world, but it is threatened in North America, and we have to be vigilant.
Just a quick other one since there's nobody else. What did you make of the protest at your office the other day by that Sikh couple who's asking for your help to not be deported to India this weekend, saying that they'd be in danger there?
Yeah, and look, I've been the Minister of Immigration for, just over a week, And so this is an ongoing file that I can't necessarily share the details with you on, and won't share details with folks. Often could compromise the safety of those individuals were they be to return to their country, and set a really dangerous precedent about speaking publicly about these issues. Protesting outside my office is entirely fair game, and it's the right of anyone living in this beautiful country to protest decisions by authorities that we may more or less control, in a democratic fashion. So I have entire sympathy for people that are fighting to keep this elderly couple in the country. I am on it, but I won't be able to reveal details any further here, or in the eventuality that a decision is made for the sake of that precedent. But I'm on it. I'm aware of the details, and our team is working on it.
I could do another one. One more. Just back on immigration and the housing crisis. And you touched on it a bit before, but just, is it fair to people coming here as immigrants and then having to deal with these super high housing prices? You know, they come here and then maybe they can't even find a reasonable place to live. How do you deal with that problem?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not someone that is moving countries in the at all near future. If I were to move countries, I don't think I would expect the host government, to provide me with a house. At the same time, you know, people come to Canada looking to fulfill a dream that they haven't been able to fulfill in their own country. And one of those dreams is to be able to get a house at a reasonable price. The doubling or tripling in equity values of houses in the last 10 years is something that is really daunting for someone that's coming to this country, often without the financial means to pay for a house. So we do have a role of increasing the supply side of things in a really tight environment of, these aren't historic interest rates, but they are very high interest rates compared to essentially quasi-free debt that we've been able to benefit from in the last 10 or 15 years. So it's a challenge for them. Economic migration comes with capital. So we shouldn't assume that that 500,000, two things. I think we shouldn't assume that the 500,000 people are actually not here yet. There are permanent residents that already have houses. Nor should we assume that those folks coming here do not have the capital to buy a house. I don't deny the reports that have come out talking about the pressure, but let's not conflate the issues, because there are separate issues that we need to deal with, and there is a housing crisis that existed before I got into politics in 2015. If I recall correctly, I campaigned in a reality where there were at least 6,000 or 7,000 families that were in need of houses in the Point, in Little Burgundy, and St. Henry, that needed to be addressed. And that was before the federal government got involved in housing. As I mentioned earlier, I think to your colleague in French, the first time in a generation. So this isn't something that has come up overnight, but I think there is that pressure that we need to provide for, and the federal government needs to play a role in it, whether it's the Housing Accelerator Fund that we have announced, whether it is the Vers chez soi that we've substantially funded over the last couple budget cycles, or the bilateral agreement that we have with the government of Quebec that we signed with the CAC a few years ago to deploy money into Quebec over a 10-year period. So we're working on it, and there's a lot more to do. And I know my predecessor and my colleague now in housing and infrastructure, Sean Fraser, is keenly aware of that, and we'll be pushing the federal government's role, as well as the role of provinces and territories, in making sure that these houses are getting built.
Thanks.
So that's everything. Thank you so much for coming. Merci à tous.